Hello, hello. Good afternoon. It's Celeste of Astrology by Celeste. Yes, it is. I'm so excited. I'm going to be having a cosmic conversation with Amanda. Hi, everyone. Hi, Chetta and Jay. Oh, hey, Patty. So good to see you. And we have good bug Good, bad, ugly. Hi, Amanda. Okay, I see you've joined. And let me see. Oh, perfect. Sometimes I have to hit it a couple of times. Let me see if that worked. Mm. Yay, it worked. It's so good to see you. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am doing good. Although my allergies have been percolating up. I don't know if there's any sway ways to help that, but we could talk about it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. It's been forever since I've done a live, so thank you for getting me out of my rut.
Oh, good, good, good. I'm so happy. So please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Amanda Gibby Peters of Simple Shui, which is a modern day mission driven, love based practice of Feng Shui. That's a mouthful. It's just meant to say we keep it simple. We're not into the fear, and we're here to help you find opportunities in your home to optimize your life.
I love that. Okay, I want to get that again. The 3 points. I love
Oh,
based,
mission driven,
mission driven.
love based. Yep.
I absolutely love that. Yes. Yeah. And tell us all, what is Feng Shui?
I love that question. So I just did a workshop yesterday. So I'm going to share the story I shared with them because it really resonated. And it just helps people understand what feng shui is, but also what the whole point of the practice is meant to create. So I always say this is a very watered down version of events, but back in ancient China, where feng shui originated, you had these emperors who hired these philosophers and sage thinkers to study the patterns, if you will, between the heavens and earth. And one of those observations was if a seed landed somewhere where there was great soil, great sun, good water, not too much wind, that seed would grow and likely thrive. But if any of those things were diminished or, detrimental, the seed, if it grew, would likely struggle. And, when I think of that, I think of like plants in our homes or plants outside. If we ever notice that there's any sort of distress or struggle, we don't blame the plant. We get curious about what? Its environment. And we're just like those seeds. Like we are either being nourished by our environment or we are facing challenges energetically that we're oftentimes not even aware of because this isn't a conversation that we're super fluent in. So that's the whole point of feng shui, to really optimize your environment for you.
I, I love that so much. And I had no idea it had to do with the
Yeah.
cosmos. And so what a natural fit with astrology. Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you make it simple for people because sometimes people get overwhelmed if there's too much
Yeah.
that's coming at
Yeah,
them. So
yeah,
what is,
I think it's becoming more mainstream that way
mhm.
now. When I started out, I feel like a lot of things felt at arm's reach. A lot of things felt confusing, and it does take a little bit. The better you want to understand anything, it's going to take a lot of patience and practice, and most people aren't wanting to do that. But I was so curious about what was happening. I didn't understand how changing something in my house could have this effect on my life. And what I started realizing the more I learned was everyone tends to cannonball in at the deep end, right? They're like, I'm going to try this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's this thread that runs through all the different schools and all the different approaches, because there are many when it comes to feng shui, just because of migrations and evolutions. But there's this thread of simplicity that runs through it. And my what I realized was people were missing out on that. And that's a really great entry point because the simple things are easy to do. You can stay consistent with them and they're way more sustainable than some of the more complicated approaches.
Hmm. Yeah. And how did Feng Shui come to you and enter
I
your life?
I love that question. So I actually came to it as a skeptic. So, I was like all fancy out of grad school and like, I'm going to go on and be a professor. And right at the time that I was finishing school, my his job relocated us. And so we came to this, what seemed like a really great house. But within just a few months, it was like everything was unraveling. And
Mm.
so there was like, I mean, it'd been many bad days compounded, but I always sort of say it was like that dark day of the soul where I'm like, something's got to give. And I just grabbed this book and I was like, whatever I see is going to be my answer. And it was someone explaining feng shui. And I thought, this is so ridiculous. We just changed houses. Like, this can't possibly work that if I change my house, my life would change. I knew like this much,
Mhm.
like genuinely, this is like just when you get in your own way. But I thought, you know what? I'm actually curious how this would even work. And so I thought, I'll buy some books, I'll try some things in my house, and I'll start blogging because this was when bloggers were the thing. I'll
Mhm.
start blogging about how it doesn't work. And things did start shifting. It's not like the big, grand, changes that sometimes you'll hear people talking about. But I was so curious to keep trying. I was so like, okay, what else is there?
Uh-huh.
Right. And that was new for me. It felt good. And our house was starting to feel more like our home. And there was just a point where some big things, probably a few months in, did shift. And I was like, okay, wait a second. I can keep being a skeptic,
Mhm.
or I can get really curious and become the student. And that's what I did. And here we are.
So what were like some of the things that you did that brought about this evolution?
Yeah, so good question. In the beginning, I was, like I said, a skeptic. So I was like, I don't want to go like all in on things that I don't necessarily understand. And I need to make choices that I can be consistent with because I prided myself on being somewhat objective, right?
Mhm.
And so so money was one of the things that, it seemed like it was coming in, but it was going out so quickly. And, I have to say, when I learned feng shui, or when I started, I've done so much study since then, but when I was first starting, Amazon didn't exist. So I had like, I think 4 books to choose from at Barnes and Noble or
Yeah.
whatever the bookstore was. So I was like, okay, what are money cures, right? Like, what can I do that will help? And fresh flowers was one of those suggestions. And so, I mean, I remember, if I'm going to be totally transparent, sitting in the parking lot and I was like, am I really going to go in and buy more flowers when I have no idea how the hell I'm going to pay some of these bills? Like, this feels so extravagant and wasteful. But I was like, if you're going to hold up your end of the bargain, you're going to buy some flowers. So
Mm.
I went in and I got the flowers, and that just became something that I was like, okay, when I'm at the grocery store once a week, I need to pick something up and find what's the cheapest, right? You don't have to go overboard. So that was one thing I did. Another thing that I did, this one was a little bit bigger, and this was where I'm like, okay, people are diving in at the deep end. I got a water fountain. It was like, oh, if you have a water fountain, all sorts of stuff will come in. But what the books don't tell you is how high maintenance some of those things are.
Mm.
And so I had this water fountain, but it kept getting hard water and I had to keep cleaning it and I was getting frustrated. And so I was like, okay, I don't love this because it's stressing me out. But it was one of the things that I tried and did. And then the other thing I did at the beginning was I put purple. Purple is the color associated with wealth, and the wealth area for us was in our kitchen. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to put purple around the space, find ways to incorporate purple. So I bought like some African violets to put on the kitchen table, things like that. Put purple Sharpies in the drawers. And like I said, it wasn't that anything, it's not like, oh, your balances are paid in full, or all of a sudden you have, new money. But I was consistent. And then I would just add on things because I was so curious. And here's what, got my attention. A couple months into that, my husband did get offered out of the blue a new job and it doubled his salary. And I was like, what's happening? So sometimes it's like you have to just show the commitment and be consistent, and the energy is changing. It's just not like, look over here, see what's happening. It really is about just, staying focused and, being as mindful about your own energy as you are the energy that you're trying to change in your home.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, there's a question here.
Okay.
Well, before I ask you the question, I want to go step back. So I got buy fresh flowers for myself, and I love having them at home.
Yeah.
But what are your recommendations about where to put them, or like what is the purpose of it? I just think they look beautiful and feel good, but with the Feng Shui.
I mean, so I have had a pulpit in front of me about fresh flowers since, pretty much the beginning. And I have gotten so much kickback over the years. Like, it's an indulgence. There's nowhere to put them that, really makes sense. They don't last long enough. There's not a special occasion, all the different things we hear. So there are a couple of things I want to say about this, and then I'll answer that question. And that is that, well, first of all, Mel Robbins just did this last week, an entire podcast on all of the research that shows just how good fresh flowers are for you. I don't normally listen to her podcast. I just happened upon it. It got mentioned in my queue. So I hit play, and I swear I was like, this is serendipity. Because now a lot of people are going to get it, right? But here's the other thing is that when you start coming up with your excuses why you can't do something feng shui or other, notice what that is. Because when people give me resistance to fresh flowers, but they want wealth in their lives, they want money, they want the opportunities, I'm like, you're not comfortable with it now. So how's it going to feel comfortable coming to you in a bigger way, right? Like, this is really an opportunity to build the stamina to allow yourself to get comfortable with that. It's not even a luxury, it's an appreciation for yourself, right? So with that in mind, I like to tell people, put the flowers wherever you're going to love them and appreciate them most, because that is, it's such a reminder of, well, things don't last forever, so to enjoy the moment. But it's also like, look at this, is so beautiful, and really like just holding your attention. And if you do it with some consistency, every bouquet is so different. And I know this sounds granular, but these things do compound. You are shedding or giving off chi in your own space. So every time you have those moments of appreciation, that's what's being deposited around you. So there's real power in that. If people are like, I really need to like have the best spot ever for flowers, then I would say put them at the center of any room, because the center is a space that just radiates into all different areas of your life. Put them at the front entry so that when chi or, energy is coming into your home, it is being greeted beautifully. Or put it in your wealth corner. And the wealth corner for everyone is if you're standing at your front door, looking into your house, it's your back left-hand corner.
Okay, so that's good to know. Okay,
yeah, and if people practice compass, it's your southeast corner. I do BTB, but you can use either, whatever works best for you, or maybe you do both, and I'm happy with that too.
So it's the left back corner. Okay, so that's my wealth corner. And what can I do to suggestions to bring the wealth corner alive?
Well, so here's what a lot of people think. They hear wealth, and of course we think like, ooh, money coming in and like, big opportunities in that. But really the front of your house where you welcome energy in is where that magnetism is the strongest. So I'm always curious about, how can you love up on your front door? If you don't have a lot of control or say over your front door, say you're in an apartment building or something, then what can you do within your entry? Because if you think about energy coming into your life, and in Feng Shui, we believe it enters the mouth of Qi, which is your front door. That space determines, or sort of has like that first impression, gets those fingerprints on that energy first. And so if it feels greeted and welcomed and, delighted, then that is the energy that continues to, cruise through your space. And so I say to people, focus on the entry to call the energy in. And then once you've got that energy coming in, focus on your wealth, because wealth is really about accumulation, right? When we think of wealth, it's not about paying the bills as much as it is having resources, having those deep pockets, right? And so that's much more an accumulation chi, but you can work with those two spaces at the same time.
Ooh, I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we're novices, we're just getting started. Let's simplify it. So what are some of the things we should be thinking about like when we walk through our front door? I feel like that's even
You
like
know what?
that's a Feng Shui principle.
I just didn't even plan for this, but just did a podcast this week. My podcast, House Therapy, talks about ways to make your entrance entrancing. And it really is about, like, think about anywhere you go. Think about, instead of having this checklist, what makes you feel good when you walk into a space? And usually it's like having somewhere to put your things down, light, being able to get a sense of what like the coming attractions are, like where am like what is this sort of giving me, in terms of the intel. Right? Really think about how you like to be welcomed into a space, and then your front entry mimicking that as much as possible. So, I would say if you're someone who orders a lot from Amazon, maybe don't have all the Amazon boxes on the floor there, right? If you have family members coming home and just dropping stuff, maybe creating a like space for those things to go. They can stay there, but like less chaos, right? Like really think about how quickly we pick up information from our environments. And even if we are indifferent or we think we don't care, you're not immune to sort of the energetic conversation that's happening. So those little tiny shifts or changes, improvements to your environment do make you feel better over time. And something else that I think is so interesting is, this is a study, not a Feng Shui study, but something I read said that people judge how they like their experiences on a home, like whatever happens in a home when they're a guest or whatever, they judge that or they decide based on how they feel right when they come into a home. Which I think is so interesting, because when you think about selling homes, realtors and that kind of stuff, that entry point is really like first impression, like, big time. And so same thing, just really having that consideration. A little bit of open space, not clutter, good light, something beautiful. Anything, we love looking for beauty. We're drawn to it, right? So something just beauty right from the start is also a really great thing to do in that space.
I love that. So we're gonna get our entryways together.
Yes.
So yeah, so that like
I know
we're
whatever you're doing this weekend under the full moon.
Yes, that's right. This is such a perfect conversation for a full moon where the sun is in Cancer about the home and the moon is going to be in Capricorn, which you're giving us practical tips
Yes.
in order to make our homes a more like a welcoming space and have more comfort there. And you mentioned a water fountain. And there's a question. Oh, my words, my pick thinks you're amazing and loves the info you're sharing.
Thank you.
And April wants to know, where should we place the water fountain?
So here's a really good suggestion that my very first mentor shared with me. And again, it goes back to, working with what you need energetically. So when it comes to a water fountain, there are two spots. So this is, this can be a little complicated for some people just because not everyone's house is like a square or a rectangle. But like I just said, if you're standing at your front door looking into your house, the back left-hand corner is wealth. If you're standing, well, let me just say this. If you're standing at your front door, imagine your entire house as a tic-tac-toe board. Okay. So 9 equal squares or 9 equal rectangles. And you might have spaces that don't completely fill out and all of that. That's a bigger conversation than what we can do on a live. But for the sake of this question, if you're standing at the front door, that front middle square is known as your career and life journey area. So, career and life journey is all about where are you going to flow? Where are you going? How are you showing up into the world, right? So, and the element most at home there happens to be water. So, a water fountain there is always perfect. I will say that whenever you're working with water features, a little tidbit, helpful tidbit, you want to make sure that that water looks like it's flowing into your house and not out the door or out the window. Otherwise, that energy is not coming into your life, it's heading out. So the career life journey area is a great space, and so is, your wealth area. I will say if you're having a hard time like paying bills and that kind of stuff, there's another area, family and new beginnings. And so again, standing at the front door looking in, it would be, imagine that middle row.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be the far left square on that middle row. And so
Okay.
that's a great spot.
So the wealth area would be there, and
Yeah,
then the area next to it would be a good place to
exactly.
put the
That's,
fountain if you're having some trouble
yep,
with.
yep,
I love that. And making sure it's
yep.
flowing into the room rather than you said out the
Yeah.
window, or what was the other thing?
Sure. And another thing you
Yeah.
could do is you could take some coins and toss them into the water fountain, and it just is amplifying that flow of money even more.
I love that. Okay. These are just like, yeah. And when you have these rituals that you get in flow with, I
Mhm.
feel like that brings the energy in because you're being
Yeah,
intentional about it,
you are
right?
like, that's what I love about feng shui is I love all the different practices, and honestly from where I started and where conversations are today, it's like a completely different universe. It's amazing. And sometimes I feel like we need to get out of our heads and
Mhm.
into our bodies. And with feng shui, you are working with your home. And so you're pairing an action with an intention. And I think it does have a little extra oomph.
Mhm.
It's a way of, like you said, it's like you're being really directive, intelligent, even manipulative, but in the best form
Mhm.
with your energy and the surroundings energy so that everything is really co-creating with you.
Mm. I think that is really so helpful. And I have a water feature that I'm going to be more intentional about where I put it and work with it. Yeah, okay. And Claudio is saying, live in a house and I look at the flowers and sunrise when I'm having
I
breakfast.
love
And the
that.
light is amazing. Yeah, like when you're bringing in your meals.
Yes.
And yeah, welcoming in beauty, I think is something you said that I really like. Oh, and Catherine's asking, is the wealth quarter the same in an apartment? I would
Yes.
assume so.
Yeah. So that map, and one of the things that confuses people is, do I apply that map to the building or do I apply it to where I live? And, there aren't rules necessarily in feng shui, but I would say something to sort of just lock in your mind is you feng shui what you have jurisdiction over, right? So, like, even for my clients who are like, can you feng shui my kiddo's dorm room? I'm not going to feng shui the dorm mate side, right? So we really work with like what's available on their side of the room. So you can always apply that map
Mhm.
to, your specific unit. If you're in a townhouse, you're in a home. If you're in a room, say you're living with someone and you don't have say in the whole house, just apply that map to the room that you're in, again lining it up. And you can go on my link, and over on my page, and there's a Bagua map at the end of, you hit that link there, but you line that map up with the front door or the entry point into your space, and then you can see where all 9 squares configure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Yes. And so you don't even have to leave. You can follow Amanda by hitting the carrot down and just follow her and then go to her link in
Mhm.
bio, as well as your website. What's your website again?
It's simple shui, SHUI.com. Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, and Crisula is asking for plants versus fresh flowers, which is best?
I mean, honestly, Honestly, both are fantastic. You're not going to go wrong. What I say to people is, what is your bandwidth, right? Like
Mm.
energetically, again, you can't co-opt the magic onto whatever you bring into your home. You are in partnership with it. So it's really important that, like, if you're somebody who's like, plants are really hard for me to keep alive, go for fresh flowers because they're going to give you an easy out.
That's me. I could kill a cactus.
Right. But listen, here's the thing that's great. Like there, honestly, go for all the things that we're talking about. I'm just going to tell everyone, if you go to simpleshui.com, I know this is a shameless plug, but it's not because it's going to help you out so much. And you go to blog and you type in plants, you type in flowers, you type in wealth corner. I've been blogging since 2008. There's going to be so much information that pops up. So you will be better informed than what we can do in 60 minutes. But like plants, I think are really one of my favorite ways to work with them is when people feel like they want to be more social or they need to network, and you can actually take some plants in your house and put them together and it will suggest that because they are living entities, right? So it's like bringing the energy together. I've had this client, I had a couple clients that I just work with every year and I've had them forever, but there is one in particular where like when things start picking up, their manager reaches out and she's like, what did you just tell them to do with plants? Because I feel like something is afoot.
I love that. Yeah, I love that idea. So, like, if you feel like, oh, I want to bring in some new
Yeah.
friends or something like that,
Yes.
you could bring in like some plants to,
Or even if you're like, I need to network,
oh,
I feel
network.
like I'm in a rush and I need new people to see me or I need new opportunities because plants, listen, plants, you got the roots growing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're breaking up the soil. So that's breaking new ground. You've got this growth happening, right? So you've got that, going new directions. And then you put that all together and it's just a commingling of really auspicious chi. I mean, it's a great little sitch to have happening in your house.
I love that. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Oh, and so Kay Swartz is asking, are there small tabletop water fountains that could work in an apartment? Is that something you blogged about or
I am going to say, well, you guys heard, I shared, I did not love my water fountain experience. So what I did was just a couple years ago, I got a huge water fountain to put out back because it is way less maintenance, right?
Mhm.
So I do not, unfortunately, I do not have any suggestions for water fountains. I do know they make small ones, but here's what I will tell everyone, like just super practical. Read the reviews because I have yet to come across a water fountain that people are just in love with. I mean, the
Okay.
minute I find it, I will not shut up about it. But they're really high maintenance, and so you just want to do due diligence on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just got one off of Amazon
yeah.
that I like. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Oh, any tips for the backyard? And Marita wants to know. I have a lovely south-facing one, and I
Amazing.
want to go by Feng Shui principles.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I with south facing, I would definitely like incorporate some lanterns out there, or maybe hang some string lights, or if you're gonna have a, you know, uh, like a fire pit or a grill or anything, sort of again going back to using that map. If we're gonna be super specific, you can also apply that map to your property. So standing at your curb, looking at your entire property, take that same tic-tac-toe board, apply it. That back middle section is your fame area and it loves fire. So that's a great thing to do in the backyard because that brings people together, but it really stokes all of that, like, visibility and, being seen and, putting your passion out into the world. It really plays to that. Also, because we just talked about it, that back left-hand corner is your wealth area. So you could do something there. I love wind chimes, metal wind chimes. Those really speak to like the coins and they pool, the hollow rods really pool the chi beautifully. So that's something you could hang in a tree there. And then because let's just do the sweep, the far back right-hand corner is your love and relationship area. So having something there that suggests partnership or, something that suggests like settling in. I mean, I know this is sort of idealistic and not everyone's space caters to that, but you can take what works for you and then leave the rest.
Mm. So I wanted to hear more about bringing in love and partnership in that back right hand corner.
Yeah.
Like, what's something you would recommend?
So
Like,
in
I feel like rose quartz would be
Oh,
something good.
amazing. Yeah, rose quartz is like sort of that steady go-to, because I think, what I love about rose quartz specifically is it's so, we're so familiar with it for relationship, but it's also really great for our own self-esteem, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times it's about just plummeting our own soul and getting clear about what's important to us and who we want to attract. So I love rose quartz. So we'll just keep going with this map thing. You could take 2 rose quartz, and instead of even working on love and relationship in your house, you could go to your bed, standing at the foot of your bed. You could do that top right hand corner of your mattress. That would be the love and relationship. And you could put 2 rose quartz underneath that, underneath your mattress, between your mattress and your bed, or your mattress and your box spring. And that will really hold that ideal for, relationship and love. The other thing that I'll say, though, for, curating that sort of energy and that likelihood in your life, is be mindful of, is your house, suggestive of that possibility? I know people get tired of hearing this, but I'm going to say it because it is what I see all the time. When I go into homes where people want to be in relationship, it is a really, like, there's a lot of times that solo imagery. And what I mean by that solo imagery, a lot of things reinforcing party of one. And it's like, suggest that, there is partnership or relationship or conversation or coming together, right? Because that's really going to help you not feel so, I'm on my own, I'm all alone, right? That stuff. For anyone's house, I would say, if you eat out all the time, a really quick fix is to just start using the kitchen. Like, like, even if you just turn the stovetop on to sort of create a little bit of heat, that's a great way to call love to you. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I had a client a couple of years ago. That's what she wanted to do, and she was busy all the time. And I was like, okay, this might be tricky because, like, you're always busy. But I was like, okay, just turn your burners on every single day. And that's something you can do also to stoke wealth for completely different reasons. But you can turn your burners on, have this idea that you're going to have relationships, and turn them off. And it's more about warming the house up. So she started going on all these dates. And after working with her for a couple months, she's like, okay, so I'm going to take a break because I'm tired of going on dates. I think I'm going to go back to working or focusing on my career. But it was so great because she saw, okay, there's this energetic, sort of acknowledgement of what I'm doing, and I'm having all these dates and I'm having a good time, but I'm having a hard time juggling both, like work and relationship. And so she put it on pause, but she had that experience, so she knows she can go back and do that again whenever she's ready. And that's what I love about it. Right? Work with what makes sense, and if something's not great for you right now, save it for later. Save it for a rainy day.
Yeah, okay. So I loved how you said, like, when you walk into some people's houses that want to bring in relationship, it's like party of one.
Yes.
What's like 2 or 3 things we can do besides the rose quartz that suggest
So I would be
in
mindful
partnership?
a lot of the solo imagery. I would be mindful of that. I would actually, like, one of the things I think helps is that sort of as if role playing, right? Like, so as if I had a relationship, what would be in my house? Now, a lot of times we'll say, like, create a little room in the closet or have something, a bedside that's cleared for them, right? But this can go beyond that. You don't even have to mess with that. If you're like, no, I want my own space. What is it that you'd want to do? Like, what is something that you enjoy doing, and how do you give that good real estate in your space? So, like, say you're like, well, I just imagine, having someone who drinks wine and plays Scrabble. Me. So then I would say, have the Scrabble board out somewhere where you can see it, have the wine, do all the things as if, any of your peach and pink and red flowers are really helpful for calling in that energy. And so something that I will say to people is, go for odd numbered stems, because that odd energy is really triggering and it's activating, whereas even tends to be a little bit more reassuring and settling. So, it's the work with the odd to call it in. And then when you want to kind of get settled because you've got someone that you're like, yeah, then go to even. So it kind of has that evening out. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay. I'm going to remember that. Okay. So Erica's saying, my wealth corner is in my backyard by the pool heater. Should I use my home instead?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So, what I teach in my classes is, the Bagua is a really helpful tool when you're brand new to Feng Shui because it is something that's easy to practice and play with. But it's not something to feel overwhelmed by or even
Mhm.
limited by. It's a tool that I work with, but it's not a tool that guides a lot of how I read home. So I just want everyone to know that if they start doing Google School, to not get worried. So the great thing about the working with the Feng Shui map is you can apply it to anything. So like I just said, you can apply it to your house, you can apply it to a room, you can apply it to your bed, you can apply it to your desk, you can apply it to your property. And so, you can look at all those different spaces to see, is there a way that I can reinforce or suggest wealth here? In my office? Can I suggest it on my desk? Can I suggest it in my bedroom? Right? So you're
Mhm.
not limited to like, I have to choose one or the other. You can take that and, make it work for you.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, you've got fangirling going on about your reels, your podcasts, and you're just being truly amazing.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Uh, I've heard the stove in the kitchen, specifically the stove, has great power for greatness in life, health, wealth, movement. Any more thoughts? You said turning on the
Yeah.
burners.
Yeah.
Anything else about the
I mean,
stove?
honestly, like if I were to just strip this to the studs, it's like keep your oven clean, use your stove. Okay. Like I can put a lot of pretty language around it, but essentially the stove and oven represent or have represented the hearth of the home, right? And so for that reason, the kitchen is often tied to health and wealth. So anytime someone's like, what's something I can do? I'm like, well, let's go look at your stove. Let's go look at your oven and see what's going on. And I've seen some crazy things. I have seen clothes stored in the oven.
What? Was that a
I
New
never
York
use it.
apartment?
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is, so like everyone, you do you, but anytime I'm trying to stoke something new, say I'm like, okay, things have it feels like things have flatlined or I'm not seeing new things, I will go turn on all of my burners once a day for 9 days or 27 days. They don't have to stay on long. You don't need to like get the space super hot. You just like, but you're visualizing or you're setting an intention, right? Like you are coming into it very consciously. It's not absent-mindedly. And here's the news flash. If you skip a day, yes, you have to start over. And that's good feedback because when we say we're really focused on something, we really want something. If we have a hard time showing up to the ritual, it's not that anything's wrong, right? Like things happen, but it does show that maybe we have too many things going on and we are really distracted from the opportunities, the assignments that are showing up to make that thing happen. So I love rituals as sort of an accountability partner. That's what I think of them as. So stoking the stove is really great anytime you want to bring something new in. In terms of your health, the kitchen as a whole is really reflective of that. And so, I'm big on purging your fridge and your freezer like once a week because if you think of everything as a spectrum of energy, things that are going bad lose that, sort of, well, they're not necessarily good to eat. And they slowly just that energy degrades. And so removing that from your fridge or your freezer, being mindful about what you keep out on your counters. This goes for anywhere in your house, but horizontal surfaces, they are landing spots. And so when we're like, why am I not getting any new ideas? Why can't I seem to come up with a solution for this? If everything in your space is like on a surface and your surfaces are sort of suffocating, there's no room for those things to land. And the kitchen is a really great place to start because it speaks to health and wealth. So people usually get a little kickback pretty quickly. So look at what you actually use or need on the daily, and then find a space for everything else. Like open up some space in your kitchen and you'll be surprised, what can transact from that.
Okay, so clearing the clutter off of the kitchen counter can be a
Yes.
powerful thing to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I've been saying I need to clean out my refrigerator, so maybe that's something I'll do this weekend, clean my fridge.
So I'm
But
your
what about you said the freezer? Because isn't the freezer where we're supposed to put things that we're going to have for a
Yeah,
while?
but everyone knows this. Like, if you're like me, last year's Halloween candy's probably still in there. And so at some point, it's like, okay, you shall pass on to your next life, right?
Okay, so maybe even purging out some of
Yeah.
that old stuff from the freezer. Okay, well, I've got my assignment. I love it. Mm. Oh, and Catherine, each of her plants have names and play plant frequency music in the space regularly.
I love that. Listen, I love when you name anything. I think it takes on new meaning because now you have a relationship, right? So if
Mm.
you haven't, name your house, name your stove and oven, name your car. Like all of these things, again, it just improves that, that energetic exchange when you feel like you're in relationship with something. I took this class a couple years, well, it was many years ago, probably 10 years ago, but and it was a shamanic study, earth medicine study. But one of the things that the teacher said that has always stayed with me, she's like, you want to be in relationship with your things. Oh, I think you froze up.
Yeah, yeah, you froze for a second. Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, oh no. You were just talking about something I really was like interested in.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
being in relationship with our
Instead
things.
of an acquaintanceship.
Oh, instead of acquaintanceship. Okay,
Yeah.
that's when you froze up.
Yeah.
Being in relationship.
Yeah, and I
Mm.
think that just helps you. I mean, it really, like, if you think about when you're at the checkout, if you are someone who gives in easily to impulse,
Mhm.
purchase that, start thinking of things in terms of that relationship, and it'll change. It won't completely prevent you from doing some of those spends, but it will change what you decide gets to keep company with you in your home.
Is this something is I think it's about thinking about the value
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, and the value for you. It's not for any New York Times bestseller to decide. It's not for feng shui friend in the neighborhood to decide. It's really not about trends or styles or, anything. It really is such a personal choice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's so in line with the energy right now. Mercury and how we think and communicate, and Venus,
Yeah.
what we love, how we partner, what we build relationships with, are both in the sign of Cancer, the sign of the home,
I
and
love
assigning an emotional, thinking emotionally about a relationship with our things, I think is so in line, fits with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a really powerful exercise for anyone who's up for it, is, well, so I have this exercise called Mind Your Metaphors.
Mhm.
This is actually great for beginners. So if you're brand new to feng shui, this is fantastic. So think of your favorite spot in your space. And it can be a room, it can be a corner, it can be a wall, it can be a shelf. It doesn't matter, but just the favorite spot. And think of a few words that you would use to describe that spot. And like, I'm not calling anyone out, we're not asking for volunteers, but like, just in your mind, it's hard to reverse engineer once I tell you where we're going. So just really think about, how do I feel? What do I love? Like, just a few descriptors.
Mhm.
And then think about a spot in your space that you don't love, that frustrates you, maybe causes you a lot of stress, or you're easily triggered by. And again, it doesn't have to be a whole room, it can just be a spot. But think about how you would describe it.
Mhm.
And the big magic here is you can remove the name of the spot with I am, and that is the energy that you're steeping in. So what's working for you and the energy you're stepping out into the world with, both in terms of the celebration of what you love, and then the things that you don't love, right? So the very first time I did this, I remember I'm in this Texas home, the ceilings are forever high, and I had all my furniture looked like it was dollhouse furniture, right? And so I remember there's this particular chair in the office I'm in now, and I could not stand looking at it because it looked so small. It gone through some things, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can't spend any money on it, right? So when I did this exercise, I realized, oh, I'm playing small. I'm afraid to invest in myself, and I'm holding on to the past.
Mm.
And it's really amazing. Now, whether you do something with that chair or not, totally up to you, but you're getting really good intel on where you might be having an influence that you've been completely unaware of in your life, that if you simply remove it, or now you're aware of it, and so you can figure out a way to make that work better for you, right? Like I
Mhm.
could have had the chair recovered, I could have, like, different things, okay?
Yeah.
When you start to make those correlations, you can start to, again, be really intentional and deliberate with, okay, how do I want to feel? So, the reason I love this exercise is what you love. So that becomes
Mhm.
a template for how to work with the spaces that you don't love.
Yeah, that is so cool. So I did it while I was talking to you. So I love sitting where I'm sitting at my dining room table. I have beautiful pictures on the wall and flowers, and I can see my courtyard, and it feels expansive. And my like master bathroom, it's
Yeah.
like it feels like the toilet area feels cramped, and I feel like closed in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is that
Yeah. And
makes
so
sense?
about that, okay, so I don't like to feel closed in. So let's just use this as an example because, I know it can be a little confusing. So then it's like, okay, so I like expansion, is what you just said. So it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you necessarily have to create expansion in the bathroom, but you could with art, something that allows you a view, right? But then you
Mhm.
can also be really deliberate with creating expansion in your house, hanging mirrors, or anything like maps, anything that suggests going bigger, going wider, right? So you start to play with that, and now you're a little bit more in tune, like, okay, this is something that I want to dial into. So how can I get creative with expressing that in my space?
I'm going to do that in my office. I'm going to figure out ways to make it more
Yeah.
expansive. Oh, I love that. Okay, April's asking a wind chime by the front door question mark.
Wind chimes are fantastic almost anywhere. I think what is helpful is to know, this is where I do think the map is a little bit more informative, because so anytime we have bells or chimes, they represent they can represent our voice, right? So the wind carries our voice, right? And so by the front door, oftentimes it's like, okay, what am I calling out into the world for? Like, what do I want to have brought into my life, right? We talked about fame and reputation. So having a wind chime out in your fame and reputation area can really be suggestive of people singing your praises, right? Your wealth area, I'll share something that one of my first teachers gave me. She's like, when you hang a wind chime in your wealth area, you always hear that chime. It is very symbolic of replenishment without diminishment. And that's a beautiful way to think of wealth. So, like, it just depends on what it is that you're wanting to create or, sort of align yourself with, but you're not going to go wrong with wind chimes anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love them. Actually, I have a wind chime I need to hang up. So I'm going to decide, do I want to put it in my wealth area or my fame area? Oh, Amrita is asking, what would you advise as a must-have or must-do for a new house?
Well, I do have a blog post dedicated to that. So go and check that because I'm sure I won't remember everything just off the top of my head. But a couple things that I love for people to do. If you can do any sort of cleansing before you move your things in, I think that that's just really helpful. It's not that, whether it's a brand new build or you're inheriting the house from, inheriting meaning buying or renting from someone who's previously lived there, you just want to remove any sort of predecessor chi. And when I say predecessor chi, this isn't like good, bad, Harry Potter, Voldemort. It is more about what were their patterns, what were their decisions, what were their conversations, what was the behavior like. You don't want to necessarily slip on their shoes and be walking around your space in their shoes. So a cleansing really helps. A couple other things I suggest people do when you're in a new home, set your bedroom up first. When you set your bedroom up first, you are like, basically it's, it's like Gandalf and the staff, it's sending out this rippled message of, I prioritize me, I matter, right? And so you're taking up space and really clarifying that you're not an afterthought. Another thing I like to do, because everyone loves money, is focus in your kitchen. So make, if you can, some meals at home. I know a lot of people are like, I don't cook ever. So eat some meals at home. It's a great way to, again, start programming your house. Essentially, you get like, imagine your iPhone when you reset it to factory settings, right? When you go in and you cleanse, and then you move your stuff in, you are setting the settings. And so by taking care of some of those spaces, you're really acknowledging what matters to you. So those are some really great things to do. The other thing two more things I'll share. One, if you have a doorbell, ring it, because that's a great way to sort of like introduce your house to you. Remember, bells are like our voices. And so this is fantastic when you're moving into a new to you space. It's also great whenever you've gone through a divorce and you're keeping the home and you want to reclaim the space as your own, you can ring the doorbell. So I would do that for a new home. Well, for both, I'd probably do it for 27 days. Okay. So just ring the doorbell. That's all you have to do. And then what was the other thing? Oh, fresh flowers. This is where I think fresh flowers are fantastic. So think of your house like a bank account. Mm-hmm. And every time you do something really lovely for your home, you are making a deposit. And so you're going to start a really good, like, sort of chi compounding situation so that the energy in your home is really loved and set up to nourish and support you. Start out your life there.
These are great suggestions. Okay. And so when you said cleansing, can you just use like a smudge stick or any incense?
You can use whatever works. I mean, you can, I know a lot of people reach for sage because it's what seems to be everywhere. But I would say you work with something a little more gentle. And what I mean by that is when we're cleansing a space and setting it up almost like a house blessing, you're not, I mean, unless you know that something, very specific has happened in the space, it's really about cleansing the space so that you feel really good walking into it. And so for those, let me think, like lavender, rose, I even love rosemary. But if you're someone who's like, I don't do well with smoke, make yourself a spritz. Get some orange rinds, put them in a spray bottle with distilled water, swirl it up, walk around, and just give it a cleanse that way. That will immediately lift the energy. You can even do something if the energy feels really stale or heavy. And by the way, yes, you can go to simpleshui.com and there are all sorts of, recipes over there to how to cleanse your space. But another thing you do if it feels really heavy is you can get like a rattle or even like a supplement bottle, and you can just go shake up each room, go to each corner and break up that sort of stagnant chi, and then walk through with your smoke cleanse or your spritz, or even a bell. And like you're breaking up any stagnant chi and then you're resetting the tone. So there's a lot of different ways that you can work with cleansing your home, and you're not locked into like, just one specific medicine, if you will.
And it's probably something that's good to do every once in a while. Like, how often do you cleanse your home?
Well, so I'm really big on doing a deep cleanse once a year because it is a lot of work. And because, you have to think you're cleansing sort of all the energy that is compounded. And so in between so when it's seasonal, I open the windows. You want to give your house a breath of fresh air, just open the windows. It's a great way to out with the old and with the new. I let the sunlight come in. I do have some different like Palo Santo incense that I sometimes light. I also love Sandoval is another company that I work with, and they have like this amazing sandalwood powder incense. It's called Sacred. It's probably my favorite thing if I'm going to do something smoky. And then I have different sprays. Again, Sandoval has a bunch of different sprays that, you know, he offers, but there are, you know, anything that you're drawn to that has those cleansing properties would be great for that in between maintenance. And if something big happens, if it feels like you need a heavier cleanse, then go for that. But don't feel like it's something you have to do every month. It's, you know, it's really about what kind of conversations are you having in your space? What are you allowing in your space? Like, what is the energy typically? And then you'll know kind of where you need to, you know, where you need to go.
Fantastic. Oh, here's a question about a fireplace. What to do with a fireplace that's decorative and doesn't work?
So that's a bigger question. Has it ever worked? If it's something, so here's the thing. If it's something that has worked before, then, you know, I would say very traditional feng shui would say you probably want to get it fixed, but I know that's not realistic. So all the time. So one of the things that I recommend is, you know, bringing in something that mimics that. So you could bring in candles, you know, and even if you didn't light the candles all the time, it would suggest that fire because, you know, all you would need is a match and it would be done. So that's something that I would probably do.
Okay. And I had a question about, so say you're having troubles in your relationship. How can you use this with your kids or your spouse or whatever? How can you use Feng Shui to just improve some of the energy?
Yeah. Well, so lavender is really great, whether that's like a spray, an incense, a plant. Lavender is really, you know, it's a gentle, it has that gentle mothering energy. So it's fantastic to incorporate in a space where people are having a hard time getting along. Another thing that I look for is, you know, does the space need a little bit of like, I don't want to say decluttering, because sometimes it's just like people's stuff gets everywhere and it kind of gets heavy. And that's a surefire way to pull the energy down. So, like, if that's the space that we're steeping in and the energy's already down, then it's almost like every time we're back in that space, we just pick up where we left off, right? And so it's really hard to pull ourselves up. So sometimes just going through and giving the space a lift can make a huge difference. Another thing that I look for is, does it feel like in relationships in particular, you know, I am curious about the bedroom. Does it feel like both partners share equal footing? So I look at the sides of the bed, I look at the amount of space, like, does it feel pretty equitable? If not, then that might be a conversation we have. And then I do the same thing with kiddos in that, you know, does it feel like if they're fighting and they share rooms, does one person have more of the room? Do they have sort of zones where they can feel like they can take up as much space as they're allowed, you know? So those are things that we'll look at. And then like with parents to kids, or I should say kids to parents, one of the things that I find when kids are just sort of running over their parents is the gallery wall, right? Like all the kiddos' pictures. And anything that hangs high up on the wall will have that sort of lording effect over us. And so sometimes it can feel like the kids are having all the say. And so I'm like, bring them down to eye level. Or maybe let's change out this gallery wall for a while. So those are some, you know, easy things to do.
I love it. Yeah. Well, oh my God, Amanda, this hour flew by. You dropped so many magical nuggets. I'm going to have to rewatch this so that I can make sure I get it all in. I know you teach classes. Is anything new coming up that you want to share with people?
No, so I have an online course and I taught it live over the spring, and those replays are available until June 30th. So anyone who's like wanting to learn feng shui, it's a great course, but right now it's sort of, you know, you get more bang for your buck because the live classes are always much longer than the recorded modules are. So I would say watch for that. But other than that, no, tune into House Therapy, the podcast, or, you know, come say hi on Instagram.
Wonderful. Yeah. And simplesway.com.
Yes.
It's your website.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I
Thank
so
you for
enjoyed
having me.
this.
Fantastic. So I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for sharing your wisdom and have a beautiful, happy full moon, happy solstice, happy all the
Oh,
things.
you too. Thank you.
Okay, bye.